Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
Hey there, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. Absolute honor that you have joined the number one industrial-related podcast in the universe. I have nothing to back it up because I can't get beyond, well, Earth, but I am going to plant a flag and say this is the number one. Thank you very much for joining, but it is dedicated to you, the industrial professionals, the companies that get it done. You are bold, you are brave, you dare greatly, you innovate. Boy, do you innovate, and you're changing not just lives, but the world. How about that? That's why we celebrate you on this particular podcast, Industrial Talk Podcast. Absolutely. We got a wonderful interview. Fluke Reliability is the company. You might have heard of them. They can make those yellow things, but boy, are they into reliability. They're leaders. The gentleman's name is Michael Mills. He's got some mad street cred out there, and he's on this podcast talking about safety and reliability and marrying the two. He is incredible. Let's get going. Yeah. If you watch it out on the YouTube, which is Industrial Talk, go out there, like it, give me, subscribe to it. How about that for a shameless plug? Do it. Anyway, you'll notice that his hair defies gravity. It's like, unlike my head, my bald head, great head of hair, that Michael guy. He's amazing. Anyway, let's just talk a little bit about information. Right now, you know as well as I do, I always talk about collaboration, right? Innovation, right? And education, absolutely. You got to do it with a sense of speed, and you got to just move forward. Don't lollygag. Move forward. Stub your toe. Shake it off. Keep moving forward. You know why? Because we need you. We need you to be successful, you industrial pro, you company that gets it done. We need you. And the reason that I'm going to be pushing hard for that is that, once again, through the tons of interviews, they fall into these categories, these focus. I need to retain my talent, figure that out, because I've got to be successful in the future. So I need talented people. I need to manage my risk. I need to put a wall around it. I need to eliminate it. I need to figure it out. 3, I need to save money. I can't just continue to spend money. I've got to figure out how to save it and save it effectively and spend it effectively. I need to make money. You've got to make money. You've got to have strategies that bring in the old revenue so that you can keep going and prosper going forward. And then finally, if the two-finger death punch COVID thing hits you again in the forehead, you have resiliency. You need to build in resiliency. That's why this particular conversation with Michael Mills is so important. And Fluke Reliability, here's the reason why. They are focused in on the majority of those components, right? They definitely help you manage risk. Oh, yeah. Their solutions help you manage risk. The other thing, their solutions help you save money. Their solutions help you make money. And definitely, resiliency, boom, their solutions fall into that category. They're innovative. Yeah, see? See how it all locks together? It's incredible. And Fluke Reliability falls right into that category. So anyway, make a note of that. We're also going to start having a news aggregator. So not only do we do podcasts here on the Industrial Talk Podcast, which you see, we're doing more lives, which you've got to participate in. They're a lot of fun, different type of content, different type of form, all of that stuff. We're doing more webinars, which is very cool. We try to create a lot of energy, all geared toward education. And now we're going to have a news aggregator, which just brings in all of the, just, one-stop shop for the latest and greatest in thinking that highlights the wonderful companies and people that have been on the podcast. We just link to their great blogs, stories, insights, so that you, the industrial professionals, the companies that get it done, have the latest and greatest information. Just go there, find it, click, read, continue to educate. All right, on to the interview. Michael Mills is the gentleman's name. He is with Fluke Reliability. He's got mad skills out there. Go find him out on LinkedIn because he knows exactly what he's talking about. Anyway, enough about me. Here's Michael Mills, Fluke Reliability. I bet you've never heard that said, Fluke. Anyway, Fluke Reliability is the company. Enjoy the interview. Michael, welcome to the Industrial Talk podcast. Absolutely honored to have you on board. And I'm sure the listeners are also as honored. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
No complaints. Thank you for asking. Yeah, you're in Fort Myers, and it looks really great. And I'm jealous. But besides that, and then you have flowing hair, which I'm jealous. I'm just a basket full of jealousness. If that's jealousness a word, I don't think so. So for the listeners out there and the ones that are jealous, can you give us a little background into who you are and why you're such an incredible professional?
Oh, great intro there, I guess. But yeah, my name is Michael Mills. I'm a solutions engineer with Fluke Reliability. I've been in the business for probably a little north of 7 years at this point. Actually, starting over with the CMMS, computerized maintenance management side, the customer success and implementation team. And then about 3 years ago, I moved over towards more of the connected reliability space, so integrating solutions and mobility. So if you hear me
hold on,
go off on that tangent for a little bit.
Yeah, just for the listeners, what is connected reliability? What do you mean by that?
So connected reliability, making sure that your assets are available when you need them, whether it's in the facilities, the industrial space, healthcare. Again, making sure that whatever your asset's saying, whether it's up, down, if it's coughing, sneezing, you're aware as well as able to react off of that information.
And that's through sort of IoTs, like devices? Or you're pulling data?
Correct. Yeah, so it depends. Again, there's a lot of different things under the Fluke Reliability belt. So we're going into the tools and handhelds that everybody thinks of those yellow devices. Or
everybody knows Fluke from the yellow
names.
Yellow Fluke, baby.
That's it. Everything looks great in yellow. But there's outside, we like to be more agnostic. One of the big questions is, my assets are coming from this vendor, this manufacturer. How do we integrate that data? We're trying to create the big picture. So that way you have a pulse on really what's happening in your operation, whether it's specifically to that equipment, to that site, that facility, or beyond.
I'll tell you right now, let's venture into that interview right now. So what we talked about prior to our conversation is you got this whole pre-COVID world that we lived in, and then there were conversations, reliability, yeah, real important, but we did this, and there was no real pinpoint focus into reliability. Post-COVID and beyond, and I think there's going to be a long-term value here, but in post-COVID, there all of a sudden is this necessity to understand what that asset, that manufacturing, that industrial asset is doing, because all of a sudden there were nobody out there. But we still needed to keep that little wheel rolling and turning, but we had no ability to be able to assess. And I think at the forefront of everybody's mind, specifically in manufacturing and industry, is like, I better deal with that risk, and I better deal with it now because I didn't do a good job when COVID hit me across my forehead with a roundhouse kick.
That's it. Yeah. Now, back in the day, we come from an industry, a space where it started with we need to put out the fire. We need to make sure that this is back up and running, and then it evolved into saves us time, makes things more efficient. Tying into your equipment, being able to detect a little bit before a potential failure, so that way you're getting to something just in time. But pre-COVID, it felt like a lot of the space and a lot of the individuals I spoke with were still operating in that mindset of, I need to get this job done now. There was no real thought, not too much thought behind, I need to do this the right way, and I need to document everything that I'm doing and be able to prove what I'm doing is correct. So it goes from an area where getting something done was no longer just the right way to go about it. It's getting it done the right way, as well as being able to look forward and say, well, here's why I did it, and when we did it was the right timing. So
yeah, and it's fun. It's fun to hear these conversations now because you know as well as I do, and you've lived in it for 7+ years of, well, maybe now, and there's this vacillation of him and Han about why we think that digitization, we need to study it more. And 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 companies like Fluke and you and others on your team said, no, it's going to happen. Either you're going to say yes, thumbs up, or you're going to get, once again, kicked upside the head by, Jackie Chan, and you're going to come back with a bruised forehead, and you're going to do it. And I like it. That we could sit here and say, COVID, there's a lot of pain out there, but there's the positive side of people are saying, I better deal with my risk. I got to start saving money.
That's it. Yeah. Now I spoke with a few companies, and usually around the same lines, they'll say, usually the status checks that they run into with their operation are just audits in general. I have to prove that I did maintenance on this asset, this system, this line. Every year I need to prove that to them, and that's just their status check to make sure they're doing things in a good fashion. But nobody predicted that a pandemic would come through and completely uproot just maintenance related activities, just your normal sanitations. Now it's really geared towards distancing. It's geared towards sanitations, cleanings, inspections on top of your normal routine maintenance. It's incredible.
Do you see that there is a potential problem between the distraction of COVID and the necessity to try to distance people to keep them doing their work, and still all of a sudden, you also have to do maintenance on this asset because the data's saying it's overheating, whatever it might be? Do you find there's a potential concern there?
I wouldn't say it will be a distraction. I say it always roots back to there's a phrase I heard, this was like years ago, where they said that you need to go slow and move thoughtfully. So always have a method to what you're doing. And what it's doing is it's shifting the playbook from again, just focus on specific maintenance, this asset that you're having trouble with over and over, to more along the lines of how do I do this in the most efficient fashion with extra pieces attached. So sanitation, being able to handle jobs that may take 2-3 individuals on a normal day, with less resources, less budget, less time, less access to parts. It's going to be a big hurdle for a lot of companies. However, I wouldn't frame it as more of a distraction, but more of a refocus and revision.
What always interests me in companies like yours, because you are also in manufacturing, but is how quickly companies can pivot, how quickly, and even though they can get, they're being dragged by it, but it's the speed at which they can pivot and deal with additional requirements. And so in the case of sanitation, they do. And it's interesting. And I'm going to sort of deviate real quick here. Your CMMS, right? Your CMMS platform. You'd also put that requirement of sanitation within that system to make sure that you are also doing the right thing in the system. Is that what would you do that?
Correct. Yeah. So it can run parallel. It can run separate, parallel, however you'd like to frame it with your maintenance team, right? So being able, it's more of the operations, more of the administrative side of it, where you need to document. You always need to show that you're having these sanitations, cleans, performs, and they can run right in tandem with that maintenance. So it could be weekly, daily, monthly, whatever the governing body dictates. Put that in the CMMS, and you can prove that these were done on time, who performed them, and if there are any other alerts that you need, corrective action needed.
I'm telling you that is going to be an interesting world that we live in, because if somebody comes down with COVID while at work, you better sort of have some sort of backup information on that. And I think that's it's a liability, it's a risk that you got to recognize as a business. So that's
true. It's a big prove it world nowadays, is being able to say that if something happens, whether it be corrective or scheduled, it needs to be taken care of and shown that it was performed. That is big, it's key, and that's where it should all be focused in one place at the tip of your fingers.
So going forward, what do you see some of the biggest challenges taking place within industry, and what you represent from a reliability perspective, what you represent at Fluke? What do you see some of the biggest challenges happening today?
So there's a few things that are really pulling. It always ties back to the two key, I'll say two of the key pillars learning from this pandemic would be agility, being able to shift your priorities, shift your focus and procedures towards what you formed and quickly. So what I say is, a lot of times when you're speaking with companies, it's easier for governing bodies to just stop where you're at, stop what you're doing, rather than proceed forward with a method, with a purpose of continuing the operation. Right.
Yeah.
The second piece that we're going to run into pretty difficult, or I foresee being a hurdle, will be repeatability. We know that this is the pandemic that we're focusing on right now. Coronavirus disease 2019 hit us like a brick, where no one was really prepared for it. I mean, some claim they are or have been, but being able to foresee what this would engulf and entail. I mean, we have operations that have been running for months remotely or not running at all. So these are two big things that we need to focus on and learn from after this virus going forward. But when it comes to the actual, what we're seeing right now, that'll be issues that people are dealing with right now would be, limited resources, whether it's people being able to be available at the site, whether it's the right people or just certain departments. Supplies are in rare form right now. You're not able to get access to certain supplies.
Wow.
And budgets, they're cut. I mean, everyone I speak with, they say, hey, we're on a spending freeze until 2021 or beyond. We don't know what that looks like. One big one.
Yeah, go ahead. No. I want to hear the big one. You don't want to hear me yammer. Give me the big one now. Outside of the fact that I have a cash flow issue, I can't get my materials. Give me the big one, bigger than those.
Yeah, I mean, the big one that we're running into is really, again, the compliance with governing bodies. You need answers as fast as problems arise. And what they're saying is, if you don't have all the answers, you don't know what this framework needs to look like, but you're being held to a rule or to a guidance that may not exist yet. We don't know exactly if there will be a second round of the COVID-19 pandemic, what this will look like, how you need to pivot at that point. So you're playing a game in which there are no rules, or maybe limited rules for you to comply with.
It's interesting because you brought up some really good, important points. Because if I'm an island, if I'm just sitting here as an island, and I'm faced with my cash flow issues, I don't know what the market is. I can't figure out how to get my feedstock or whatever, and I can't I don't have any money, right? If I'm sitting here alone, man, I feel bad, because this is where we start talking about collaboration. And that's why it's so great that you, on the Industrial Talk podcast, we're collaborating, because people need to hear the fact that these challenges exist, and it's important for us to consider collaboration, because somebody might have an answer that will help you, and which is important, especially now because we don't know what it looks like. It's
yeah.
Really,
I spoke with a company a company a few months ago. The gentleman mentioned that their facility fully shut down. He was part of the maintenance team for a big building up in, I believe it was New York. He got sent home with the rest of his team. And the only way that they're allowed to come back to the facility is if a piece of equipment that's running the operation has some type of big failure. And it has to be a big failure. And the big question became, how do you know if there's a failure on site if nobody's there? And his comment was, we don't right now. We wait for the call from someone who happens to be there. So it's just a big question. And so he's taking it as a positive, where it's allowing him to do his research now. He's been out for a few months at this point, just waiting for the call to say, come back and inspect the facility. But he's allowed to look now into what they'll do in the future, what would have been successful. And he's doing a lot of research into those stories, those success stories of, I'm so happy I had my maintenance system and my SOPs set up beforehand for us to shift. So he's spinning it as a positive, where in the future, whether the next epidemic or event is health related, as in COVID, or if it's economic crisis, how they're going to shift and be prepared to run at a really flat rate.
Yeah, a couple of things that come to mind. With that strategy, if there's an asset failure, there's a real tremendous risk for environmental challenge. I mean, there's just that's tough, right? And there's no excuse. Just from today, there are systems, solutions, and the ability to be able to collect that data remotely, and that and I mean every company should be looking for those solutions, because you just have no idea if there's going to be another wave, whatever, it evolves into something else. Who knows? But you better create that resiliency within that your organization if you want to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two big things that pop up out of this is visibility wherever you are. For example, again, that individual was monitoring their system, not systems, but any work that they had from a web-based system, he'd be able to go online and see what was actually happening in his operation, right? Just seeing who's doing what. There's also a big play for mobility. I work with a mobile app right now that, again, you're able to take your work with you on the go. So being able to work and take information with you as you're going from site to site is huge nowadays. So having to drive from a facility that may be locked down where that information's not accessible, take that information with you, documentation, manuals.
See, you're pulling on that string, man, and it's not. It doesn't have to be a catastrophic failure, right? You can't just come after the fact and say, "Oh my gosh, the world is ending because of that thing." You finally failed. You can see trends taking place. You have the ability to say, "Hey, that asset is struggling in some way, shape, or form. It's vibrating, heating up, whatever it might be." You can proactively go in there and say, "Ning, ning, ning," and say, "Hey, I got to fix this thing because of these reasons." That's legit.
Exactly. It's giving you that perfect middle work that's recurring and scheduled, and reacting off of what's being emailed to you or sent in via your CMMS, but also tapping into that actual piece of equipment. Things that you may not hear, things that are just detected without you being directly on site. You say, I can prove that there is an issue, and here's what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah.
Or here are the steps that I need to take to remediate that issue.
And you can create some sort of distancing. You can at least go in with your eyes wide open and saying, I got to get to that motor. I got to get to that pump. I got to get to that thing, right? And we got to make sure that you're not here, you're not here, you're not here. I got my toolbox. I'm going in here, and I've got my mask. You can at least approach a challenge, a safety-related challenge, from that perspective. You can do that. There's nothing that says you can't.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a big shift that I'm seeing, especially after talking to certain individuals about where they'll be heading, is no longer just, what parts and tools will I need to go and fix this, or, what are the steps to turn it off, turn it on, or whatever needs to take place. A lot of the shift is happening now towards, again, that cleaning and inspection where, what PPE do I need to bring with me? Are the regulations, again, how close I can be to somebody else, or what disinfectants were used is going to be a huge one, chemicals that are going to be applied to different areas. So having that at a glance is going to be huge, especially when you're saying, did this person know about that? Any limitations? Yes or no?
Yeah, it's more cumbersome. I hate washing my hands. Not to say I don't when I shake your hands, but
Yeah, no, that's why we're doing it virtually right now.
Yeah, that's right. You just don't want to touch my hands. Here's the deal. We've got some actionable points that you put down on your list. And I want you to speak to each one individually because it's important, especially in today's world, in the COVID world and beyond, and whatever that looks like. I have no idea. We've got three things: continuity, agility, repeatability, and adaptability. Can we start with continuity?
Continuity. Yep. I spoke with a few of my team members. We were discussing there's really that 3 or 4 key pillars to a successful system, or things that companies will need to keep in mind going forward. Continuity being the big one that popped up day one, which was, we want to keep our operation running, even if we're running slim, very, very lean in our operation, whether it be people, budgets, resources that are around or not. So being able to successfully progress your operation as you go along is going to be huge. We don't want, when I speak of continuity, I don't mean closing doors, even though some companies had to. We're talking about being able to not just wait out this coronavirus disease 2019. It's more of being able to progress, at least in a limited capacity, and say why you're able to, creating these success stories of, I was able to keep half of my staff still in the building, whether it's alternating or however that works out. It's going to, one, restore faith in your company and your ability to progress, keep your employees happy with the fact that you're able to do the best you could. And on top of that, it's great for the name of the company in general. We were able to wait this out, and here's how we were successful.
I like that. And instead of shutting everything down, you have to be innovative in thinking through this, and you have to be and really have meaningful conversations on how to create a level of continuity going forward, because we just don't know. We've been kicked in the face. Now we got to go forward with that in mind, and creating that level of continuity is important, and that requires innovative thinking.
Exactly. There's nothing worse than when your operation is officially, if you have to shut down or if you have to,
Duh.
unfortunately, lay off members. People look at that and they lose confidence in your brand, your department, your whatever it is. And if you're able to use this as an improvement, as
Yeah.
something that you can show, we went slow, we were methodical in the way that we progressed, and governing bodies looked at it and said, you can keep your doors open, you can keep doing whatever it is. That is success, even in a limited capacity.
Yeah. And if you don't, especially now, start to innovate and think through that level of continuity and what that looks like going forward, shame on you, because you never know what's going to. Let's talk a little bit about agility. What does that mean to you? Agility.
Agility. So really, it's your ability to shift. Again, in an environment that requires solutions as fast as problems are occurring, as they're arising, with really no answers at the time. It's your ability to effectively shift. There may be a plan in place, but how quickly can you get to it? Could it be the next day after the coronavirus pops up that you're able to say, we're going to increase our sanitations, we're going to think mindfully as we go through these practices and space everyone out? How is that going to look? Some customers that I've spoken with said, we had a plan in place, we've had it for years. However, either A, nobody knew about it, or B, we couldn't get it in place fast enough, so they had to take a week off, take 2 weeks off to make sure everyone was trained on it. So it's that flexibility to shuffle from what you know and what you're used to, which a lot of people struggle with in general, to what's new.
And in the world of COVID, one day everything was just humming right along. We were just having a grand old time. And then, like, in a matter of 8 hours, click, somebody came in and said, I'm turning the lights off on this economy, and it's going to be global. So good luck. You better be agile in that. It's like, it's a killer.
And that's it. I'm a creature of habit. I like to do the same thing every morning. I get up, I go through the same process. It's the same thing every day. However, when you move on to that next level, what is tomorrow going to look like? What else is going to be required of me to do, and how do I pack that into the same amount of time that I had previously? So it's going to be interesting the way that companies are shifting. We have seen many shift to better practices up front. But what will that look like in 3 years, 5 years? Who's going on the same process?
You just better be thinking differently and looking at it from a continuity perspective. Paper and pencil, listeners. Continuity, agility, and then the last one, we're talking repeatability and adaptability. Everything is what I get it, and I can see where it's going. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So it goes back to the thought of this pandemic was sprung on everyone. It's one of those events where people weren't prepared for it. There wasn't a playbook for it. But the idea is that this is probably not going to be the last event that people will encounter over the next however many years. Again, nobody foresees them, how long it'll take for the next one to happen, but I'm sure the next one will happen. And can you use the same mold or the same template that you are using today? Or at least, again, that agility, that continuity plan that you have towards an event that could be economic. It could be an economic crisis, it could be another health-related issue, or something that maybe we've never heard of before. Can you use the same mold to quickly get to the process without missing a beat? How do you create those fire drills for something that may or may not have existed before?
I love it. I really do. So what we have: continuity, agility, repeatability, and adaptability. And if you're listening out there and you're not doing that, if you're not thinking about that, if you're not innovating around that, then there are going to be companies that do, and they're going to sort of ride out the next challenge with a little less pain, a lot less pain. So that's good. Hey, we're going to have to wrap it up. Now, are you, and you're not, by the way, I just FYI, I'm going to call you out on this. As I look at your LinkedIn stat card, although very impressive, my friend, you're not very active out on LinkedIn, are you?
As of right now, not too much.
Yeah.
I actually work with I'm privileged to work with a great team who's very active, and they get the message out there. And when I'm reading their content, I think, like, how can I repeat something that is as great as that? How can I follow up that type of practice? I'll say it all evolved from actually my boss put out a hilarious piece of content. I read through it and I said, I'm not that funny and I'm not that witty. So
get out of here.
It kind of put me on pause.
It's not that, man. It's just like the fact that if I say, hey, If you like the way his hair looks in this video, you need to reach out to him on LinkedIn. Definitely. His name is Michael Mills. You can put a comma in there and CRL it. You'll find him. He has a grand total of 262 connections, right there, 262. Mm-hmm. Woo, you're a barn burner out there on LinkedIn.
And growing.
And growing. One a year. That's what I'm committed to. One a year. All right, reach out to him.
That's it.
Michael Mills is it. CRL, title right there. Rutgers graduate. I won't hold that against him on that, but nonetheless, great conversation, my friend. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe.
I like it. Take the notes out there, you listeners. We're going to wrap it up on the other side. I'll know if you walk away, so don't walk away. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right. Thank you very much once again for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. You can find Michael Mills. His stat card is insane out on LinkedIn. Just type in Michael Mills, put a little comment in there, put Fluke in there. You'll find him. You'll find his head of hair too. It's amazing. Incredible professional, senior sales engineer with Fluke. I'm telling you, they're all out there. They're incredible. Touch base with that gentleman. And if you have any other questions, comments, and concerns, everything will be at the Industrial Talk podcast at industrialtalk.com. Do not miss out. You want a link there? Go to Industrial Talk. If you want to find out more about Fluke, go to Industrial Talk. I'll have all the links there. Make it simple and easy peasy. Once again, we're trying to create a platform that continues to celebrate you and your contributions. That's why the podcast is here. That's why we do live. That's why we do webinars. And we're trying to change it up in a way that makes sense and creates energy, because we want people to consume what you are providing. That you have to. You're changing the world, so people got it. If I don't comprehend, then I'm not benefiting from it. So we want you to benefit. And also with the Industrial Porter, everything. One-stop shop. Thank you once again. You are bold. You are brave. You dare greatly. You're changing the world. You innovate. You do. Be proud. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. We will be back with another great interview shortly.